Well, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to, I'm Bushka on Blitz, and today we're going to be looking at the KV13 as the torrent of content continues here on channel. If you haven't already, please do check out bushkaonblitz.com. Heaps of stuff going up there every day. There's a new post, lots of different information. Or if you'd like to sponsor the channel and keep the tank magic happening, Fat Aussie style, then please click on the Patreon link there. Otherwise, onwards and upwards, and let's get cracking with a look at what is quite a tough little customer. Now, it's got some good positive talking points, certainly got some really great things going for it, but at the same time, there is a lot to be said for gun depression, and I love tanks with gun depression, and the KV13 doesn't really have a lot of it. It also is particularly Russian in that sense. It's a common trait of a lot of the Russian medium tanks. It's very T54, very T62A. Even the Object 140 only musters -6 degrees of gun depression, and the KV13 has -5, which is right there with the majority of the Ruskies. It is based on the chassis of the IS. If you've seen the Tier 7 heavy tank, the IS, you'll recognize that chassis straight away, and that's a lot of the tanks in the game. Obviously they do that with the KV2 has the same chassis as the KV1 and the KV1S, etc. They kind of progress through to this IS, and then the KV13 has that style of chassis as well. And it's an awkward chassis, and it's one of the things that makes this tank so tough is that it's made up of a lot of little angles. It's kind of like a junior IS6 version of the armour profile. Lots of different plates that angle off at different directions, and obviously has weak points, and that's fine. But because of the nature of mediums and the fact that you're often going backwards and forwards at quite a fast rate, that chassis can be very tough to penetrate, and that makes it an interesting tank to actually drive because it's tough as nails at times. It gets a lot of bounces that you don't really expect. And that's nice because who doesn't like an unexpected bounce? It's also got a very reasonable amount of damage per minute. It's very tier 8 in its DPM, right around that 2,000 mark, just a shade under, about 1,900. And that's certainly acceptable for anything at tier 7. It's just that a lot of the other tanks at tier 7 have exceptionally large doses of DPM, most notably the Comet, which runs at 2,400, and the T43, which is a couple of hundred under that. That's not to say that you're ever going to be outgunned. If you can get an extra bounce on this tank every once in a while, it'll make your life a lot easier, and you'll actually raise your effective DPM because you're in the game longer, I guess. What it does have is a fairly mobile... Well, look, it's mobile, but while the game actually says it does 50 kilometers an hour and has a whole buttload of traverse, as it often says these kind of things, it doesn't really feel like that. It feels mobile, but it doesn't feel super quick. It feels mobile, but without having exceptional pickup. Still in all, you've got 40 degrees of traverse on your tracks and 48 degrees of traverse on your turret, which means that it's an exceptionally strong tank in turns and in turn fighting. And you can see there it's getting around pretty quick and pretty nimble. Its pickup isn't as good as, say, a Comet or even a T43, I think. There you go, that's the KV1S, and that's actually got a very similar armour profile to the gun, to the actual tank that we're driving at the moment, the KV13. Now, the KV13 was the second Russian medium introduced in the second Russian medium line by Blitz, and not a complete line at that. We're talking about the KV13 is an extra medium at tier 7, the Object is an extra medium at tier 10, but there is obviously no extra medium at tier 9. We've got the good old T54 and the T44 combo running at tier 8. Now, the 13, for all the negatives about the gun depression and the fact that while it states it has fantastic mobility, it doesn't actually feel as mobile as, say, a Comet or a 43, is an excellent medium tank. Once you learn to live with lower gun depression, it's a very solid turn fighter. It gets shots off on the move pretty well. It has this trollish armor profile. It's got very, very nice mobility in terms of your actual traverse, and your gun numbers are solid, if not spectacular. It's got more alpha than the Comet, which you can put to use as more of a peak boom tank, because you're not running 15 rounds per minute. You don't have to be as exposed as a tank like that. It does have 144mm of pen on its AP and 194 on its APCR, which is not amazing at all. It's very, very typically Russian. But the gun is 0.37 dispersion, which is pretty solid for a Russian tank at tier 7. Indeed, it's one of the better ones, and it's 2.3 second aim time, lets you comfortably get shots away in a peek-a-boom setting without having to expose yourself for too long. So if you combine the awkward angles of the armour with the exceptionally solid gun handling, then you're going to get a tank that you can really use to exploit. And talking about the gun handling, have a look at me trying to, this is one of the first games I had in the KV-13, me trying to get the gun down. This is when I realised that it had 5 degrees of gun depression. I just can't get the bugger down. I've got to go up a hill to get it to sit. And that's one of the tricks you can do. If you climb an incline like that and you put it on an angle, then you can certainly get the gun to work. But you've got to climb up the mountain to do it. You can't just sit here and get the gun down. Look, it is killing me. It's ferocious. I've knocked down my little tree. I've got my little bit of camo, all that kind of thing, and I've finally got into this position where I can utilise it and we get a bounce straight away. Now, it plays like a bit of a heavium. It's far more medium than it is heavy, don't get me wrong. But unlike the Comet and the 43, which rely on quick angling and darting in and out and using gun depression, the KV-13 is tougher than that. It's able to absorb punishment and in a far more effective manner than most of its contemporaries. And because of that, you'll have a lot of games where you'll grind the enemy down. You'll peek-a-boom them down. You've got 200 alpha. You'll just make sure that you get your shots. You take good shots all the time. You can see that we're calling that KV-1S, and we knock him on the head. And it's actually a tank that's grown on me. I really enjoy driving it. Hoodie was the one who pointed me at the KV-13. Of course, I'm a confirmed Comet fanboy. I absolutely adore it. It's got so much going for it. But when you drive that all the time and you come across a tank like this, which is a bit of an ugly duckling, it doesn't look that special to me. It looks like a bit of a weak IS, and it certainly looks very drab. I think the Comet looks very dashing, if that's the right thing to say, and it's got that lightning bolt DPM, which really gets things done. But you can see how effective this tank is once you get it working at kind of a slight range. The angles are very, very tough to hit, and you can see that aim time's very good, and that Tiger's stopping it on the move and trying to get aim time sorted out, and it's much harder. He doesn't have enough gun handling to get it done, and this thing just keeps performing. It's almost like I find the Russian TDs have a lower than listed value in terms of accuracy, yet I find the KV-13 with a 0.37 dispersion and a 2.3 second aim time behaves far more appropriately and actually hits a lot more of the targets that I don't think it's going to hit, which is a pleasant surprise any day of the week. And obviously we're going for the guy at the back, and we miss him after I've just talked it up. Anyway, once you get up close and personal, you are still a medium tank. Don't forget that. And because you are still a medium tank, you are still liable to get belted every once in a while by a big-ass heavy. And you can see we're trying to side scrape there off the carcass of that IS. There we go. They're all dead. Are you getting the point? I think it's really solid. I think in a crop of tier 7 mediums that's very tough to break into, it more than holds its own. And I know a lot of people that prefer this to the Comet, that prefer it to the T43, which are both outstanding mediums in my opinion, because of that toughness. And it does have a toughness factor. There is no doubt about it. Look, I'm a big Comet boy. And I think if you're going to drive tier 7 and you've got one, you're mad not to. But I've started driving this a little bit more. I've started actually enjoying it and playing it, particularly alongside another tank that's a strong medium or a big DPM medium, is perfect, because when you get involved in the nasty stuff, you can get into it together and you can soak up the pressure while they just seagull about and get all the glory, but you're still tough enough and rough enough to get in there and get involved. Now we're working the top steps here on Temple. Basically, holding court. This is a fantastically strong position. There's an M10, a T43, a Tiger 1. I've got to say, this is another tank that's benefited hugely from +1, -1 matchmaking, because when it was coming up against tier 9 tanks, it's obviously its armor profile is just going to get penned. It's just going to get overmatched. But when you're against a lot of same tier tanks, you find yourself, like in this game, you can get in really strong positions, you can bounce shots, and you can be very, very effective. And that's something that I think is great for the game, and I'm a huge fan and a huge positive supporter of +1, -1 matchmaking. I think it's the most fair way of doing business in the game, and it gives everyone an equal opportunity rather than forcing people to play up or down 2 tiers, which is, I just don't think that's in any way fair. Regardless, onwards and upwards, and the gun handling is fine it's 0.37, but you can see here it's hitting plenty of shots, and the mobility is lovely. It gets backwards and forwards. It's bounced a heap of shots from the top here. You can side scrape off things. You can move about. We're going to get a couple little one there to go on with from the T29, which is fair enough. We've still got plenty of work to do. 4-on-4 and lots more action to take place yet. And that T29 is a very, very tough tank. If you've ever faced up against the T29 in a medium, you'd know that their armor profile is quite significant. And if they angle it, they can really do some damage. You often find people that don't angle T29s, and they're doing themselves a disservice, because the frontal armor at a tier 7 mano a mano thing, you can see there, I've got to go to APCR because I'm just worried about not being able to pen, and that clears him up. But he's angled that pretty well, and that's exceptionally fine by him. But we're going to move on down here and let our mobility do the talking, because if we don't have to worry about him and we can just concentrate on this Comet, and we're going to go turn fight him, quick hand on the old repair kit there, straight into the Comet, just trying to get bounces, side by siding him. He panics and fires one off into the distance, which isn't going to do him any good whatsoever, and we nail that fellow good and proper. So you can see mobile, strong, good DPM, solid gun handling, and crap gun depression make it a very decent tank if you can set it up correctly. But don't go trying to go hull down with it and shoot down hills, because you'll just get frustrated. You'll never get any shots off. And that's the KV13. And we're grinding through all these tiers and all these tanks. Lots of reviews over the last couple of weeks, last month, and there's going to be a lot more over the next month. I want to try and get as close as I can to coverage at least a few tanks in every line, and in some lines, in some of the more popular lines, more than one tank, more than 2 tanks, more than 3 tanks, the whole line, in fact. You're lovely people. You're wonderful human beings. I'm Bushka on Blitz. Until next time, stay safe on the battlefield.